Well, spring is here and many people are itching to get their gardens going along with planting flowers, trees, and shrubs. But apparently there is a right way and a wrong way to do these things. So we thought that we should enlist an expert today. Barby is the co-owner of Greenhaven Garden Center in Lethbridge. Welcome to Bridge City News. Karen, so great to have you on today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So this year we had snow in April again, and then of course it can happen in May as well because, you know, we are in southern Alberta. Anything can happen, right? But with that in mind, when is it actually safe to start planting our gardens with the iffy weather that we have?
Well, there's some things you can plant early. So things that like potatoes and onions that go in the ground, they're underneath the soil, they're fine to plant. Radish seeds, lettuce seeds, spinach seeds, all wonderful time this time of year. Easy to do. So our gardening kind of means that you can't do it all in one weekend. It is over a period of time. If you want to have a lot going on, a lot of people are doing strawberry plants now. Asparagus plants can go in. So there's a fair amount of early garden stuff.
Right. Now, does that mean that those specific vegetables are resistant to cold and would be able to, you can actually plant it early in the season because they're a little bit more hardy?
Yeah, they're earlier and they like the cooler weather, so they don't mind it. I mean, we're over hopefully the heavy cold like last week, but now the soil is warm enough for those seeds. Even cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, people are starting to look at either seeding those out or soon they'll plant their little plants of those out.
Awesome. Good to know. So now what do we need to do to prepare the soil for a good growing season?
Oh, that's the most important part. Really, it is. So it means when you have your vegetable garden, you want to have really good loose soil, and it needs to have in southern Alberta we have heavy clay soil. So loosening it up and amending it with any kind of good compost. So it can be composted steer manure, composted sheep manure, compost that you've done yourself, and you really work it into the soil. You want a good 6 or 8 inches worth, I'm still inches, of having that looser soil so that you can get your seeds and they'll start growing in that soil.
Okay. Now, any advice on how to control those bugs that like to destroy weeds and plants? How can we control those bugs naturally without damaging chemicals?
Well, there's lots of actually good organic chemicals, and I always say like you can't really do a preventative because some plants naturally don't have a problem, and others are susceptible. So there's a safer soap product. Woodstream makes a beautiful safer soap, and one called Trounce, and another one called Bug Be Gone. Those are all wonderful contact sprays. Soapy water that you use yourself with dish soap, sometimes you can burn your leaves or suffocate them, and you just wait to see if you have a problem. One thing that we always find, like with radishes, they're susceptible to a maggot, a root maggot, and so when you plant those, your onions and your radish, you can actually sprinkle a little Epsom salts in the row, but with your seed, and then cover up your soil, and that does help keep those under control.
Okay, interesting. Good advice there. Now, Karen, is it true that if you seed several times through the spring, like say every 10 days, that you can prolong your harvest of baby vegetables and those tender greens? Is that true?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that is true. So things like lettuce, all the different kinds of lettuce and radishes respond the best for doing that successive seeding, it's called. A few in herbs, not everyone does it with dill and cilantro, but it can be done. And it's really important to do it for the lettuce though, because you just get this really good crop. You can do it about till the end of June, when if we start getting really warm in July, they don't germinate so well. So you always have to do it starting May and a little bit end of April, May, and into June.
Okay, well, good to know. Now, what about perennial plants? Do we need to do anything with them to prepare for a good growing season?
Yeah, that's not so much the soil. You can kind of work around them, cut off all of your dead leaves and dead stems and get everything cleaned up to the green again. And then you can always work in a little bit of compost around them. They're usually not heavy feeders as far as trying to fertilize, but compost is a wonderful thing. Bone meal is good, and you just sort of can work it into that soil. And they can get planted early now too. Perennials can take cooler nights, so you don't have to wait for May long weekend to plant perennials.
Well, it's good that they can take those colder nights because we do seem to have a lot of those. Even when we have the warmer days, unfortunately, it seems that way.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. Now, we all love green lawns, don't we? So when should we rake off last year's dead grass and be applying that fertilizer? And how often should the grass get watered?
Well, now we've had the moisture, so the grasses are green. The grass is greening up quite well here. That raking and cleaning up actually needed to happen in April this year because we were very dry this winter. There was a lot of leaf cleanup and everything that needs to get done right away. So it's basically for us too late for power raking, but you can do a hand raking. And then fertilizer should start now, and you can do it every couple of months. There's some good spring, summer fertilizers that will help keep that lawn nice and green.
Okay, so take note, everyone. Time to rake those lawns now because it's
Yes.
April.
Yeah, get all the old leaves off of
Yeah.
it, and it's not growing really fast, but I think as we warm up, we're definitely going to see things greening up.
So put that on the to-do list for sure. How short should the lawn be mowed? Is there an ideal height?
I find that like 2 inches, so like 5 centimeters, is a good depth. The lawn doesn't dry out really fast. It holds its own, but it doesn't get scorched and scalped. So that 5 centimeters is a good height to have. If you go lower than that, you run the risk of actually sunburning and drying out your roots on that lawn.
Wow, okay. I had no idea that could happen, but good to know. Now, Karen, do you have any tips on how to get rid of quack grass?
Oh,
And maybe
that's one
explain
of
what
our
quack
biggest.
grass is too as well.
Yes, because quackgrass is a perennial grass that grows here on the prairies very well. It's very invasive, so it grows in lawns, but it can grow around the edges. It likes not such great soil. So if it's on the edge of sidewalk or something, it's very long bladed and it makes big clump, and it's not a pretty grass. But the more you try and pull quackgrass, the more you're making it expand because you're pulling on those little roots, and that actually makes it increase rather than decrease. And there is no organic chemical control of quackgrass. That is the one that actually official Roundup, the chemical Roundup, will kill it. It'll kill the root, but you also have to be very careful with your grass that's growing around. And that's one way. If you try and dig it out, you'll just go forever trying to get all those roots, but you can do it if you're persistent. There is a new Roundup called Advanced Roundup, and it's a vinegar based, so it might just keep burning the green off, but not actually killing the roots.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's a challenge. I have to say, quackgrass in Ontario, down east, they have one called crabgrass. And that's an annual grass that's a big problem there. And they can control that with crabgrass killers. We don't have crabgrass here. So our quackgrass is perennial, and it's very annoying.
Ugh, yuck. Okay, so what about those pesky dandelions? Speaking of pesky things, right? What actually works to keep those under control?
Well, if you have some spare time and like to be outside, you actually can dig the roots out, and that does help. There's actually little dandelion diggers that work quite well.
Okay.
So that's one way. There's another product called Weed Be Gone that's iron based, so it's not a chemical, and you keep spraying it, and it actually makes the dandelion go sort of black and can control it. Yeah, so it's fairly effective. And then back to the chemical, there's the one called Killex, which is not available in garden centers all across Canada. Killex is still allowed to be sold in Alberta, and it is the one that has the chemical called 2,4-D, which makes the dandelion grow to death, is what happens. It makes it grow real fast, and it kills it.
Okay, kind of just speeds up the process.
Yeah, speeds it up, yes.
Interesting.
So there are some choices for that one. It's definitely another one that people have to decide how much and what they want to do with the dandelions.
Yeah, very informative. Thank you. Now, do you have any specific advice on how to grow large, healthy tomatoes?
Oh, yes. We love growing tomatoes. I think that's the most important plant for every single person. If you only grow one thing in your garden, the tomato is so productive for us anyways.
Yeah.
And good soil. We love using that compost kind of stuff that works. There's some really good fertilizers, some organic that are excellent. And one product that they always seem to like is some extra calcium. So a fertilizer with extra calcium in it. There's liquid form and dry form. And just depending, you shouldn't use a dry form of tomato fertilizer in a tomato that's in a pot. In the ground, it's okay. But if you're growing tomatoes in pots, use a fertilizer you can mix with water.
Okay, interesting. Now, speaking of summery stuff, what's the secret to growing a large strawberry patch? We all love strawberries in the summer.
Okay, well then back to good soil again. And actually the strawberry plants are important. They do tend to burn, like grow themselves out after a few years. You might have to replace your strawberries like every 5 years. The June bearing strawberries give you the biggest crop in the month of June, and they're actually the hardiest. These new ones called day neutrals will start in August and go till it freezes. Good soil again, and I find they're so-so for trying to grow in pots. You actually do better if they're in the ground.
Okay, and Karen, are there do's and don'ts of growing roses?
The roses are two different kinds. There's tender roses that have lots of do's and don'ts, because here on the prairies we have to protect that root for the winter, or you can get winter kill, and they're grafted. So the graft comes alive, but you don't have a rose plant anymore. The hardy shrub roses, there's lots of varieties of those. And really you just trim off if there's a little bit of dead stem on those. And lots of sun. So they need a minimum of, well, a good 6 hours of sun would be the minimum. They're better off with about 8.
All right. Now, is there a good time to plant evergreen or spruce trees? What's the best time to do that? Or is there?
Oh, they can get planted all summer, but the nice thing about planting those evergreens is that they have time for their root to develop. So as soon as the frost is out of ground and they're available at the garden centers, is a great time to get them growing. You've got cooler, not so hot and dry first thing in the spring, so they can get a root system established, and then they're okay. We do sell plants all year long. In the summertime, it's sometimes not as available. There's not as much choice available for those.
Okay. Now, if you were digging holes for those sort of coniferous trees, how big of a hole how big should you be digging, and what would you do for fertilizer and soil for that type of tree?
Oh, yeah, those ones, usually what you do is dig twice the width if it's in a pot. Most of them come in some kind of a container. So twice the size of that pot all the way around, and the depth about 1.5 times. And then you take out, with us, the clay soil that's heavy and not so great. And then you kind of work in and amend some better soil with it. Some triple mix soil is good, or some compost. Peat moss is good too. And then plant that plant back in. We sell a product called Mike, which gives our customers a 5-year warranty. So they have to apply that Mike right to the root ball and then plant it in. So you don't fertilize at that time. If you do fertilize without using Mike, something that's a root starting fertilizer, and that means it's quite high in that second number in the fertilizer. Usually that's sold in a liquid form.
Okay, great advice. Now then, on the flip side, what if you were wanting to plant more leafy trees or shrubs? When's the best time to plant, and what type of soil and fertilizers do those need?
That would be about the same as
Okay.
the evergreens. The more important thing with those ones is they go through a little bit more transplant shock with the leaves on them. So when you plant them, you try and do it when it's not in the heat of the day or really windy. Try and do it early morning or late afternoon, early evening. Yeah, so that helps them. And that soil again is critical to get the roots going and amending it a little bit. So compost seems to be the answer for
Yeah,
just about everything
it's
for
the way to
those.
go. Well, what great advice you've given to all of us, Karen. Thank you so much for your advice and for your time, your expertise, and for being with us today. Karen Barby is the co-owner of Greenhaven Garden Center here in Lethbridge. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.